would you kindly join me for a special bonus episode of BioShock? This is Jewel Smith playing BioShock the Collection. And in the last episode, I completed the game. I saved all the little sisters, I got the happy ending, and I defeated the big boss. I am not going to move on to BioShock 2 quite yet because there is some bonus content here that we're going to take a look at. In this episode, we are going to visit the museum. What is the museum? Well, it's a museum. At first I thought it would be all of the pictures I had taken with the research camera, but no. It is the Museum of Orphaned Concepts, a guided tour of ideas that Irrational Games discarded or reworked heavily during the making of the original BioShock. We've got Health and Eve bars up there, even though it doesn't matter. We can move around. You can look past the barbed wire. There, off in the distance. They've got this blocked, so we can't go that way. Some shells laying around. So let's move forward into the museum. Hanging sea life. Not as much as a cut concept as an Easter egg for observant museum visitors. These sea creatures can be seen swimming past the player's view during the bathysphere ride down to Rapture in BioShock's opening sequence. And here we are. This is an actual museum that I can move through. I can jump, but I can't seem to use weapons or anything else. I can move around, I can look around, and I can jump. But let's take a look. Forest concept art. Irrational's artists tried to envisage how an underwater city would actually function in this early conceptual work of Rapture. One idea imagined a thick forest for the purpose of oxygen exchange, seen here with an observation catwalk running around the edge. The concept of using trees for oxygen exchange made it into the final game in the Arcadia level. The Gatherer. It may be hard to imagine that this creature, whose job it was to reclaim Adam from corpses around Rapture, was the earliest iteration of the idea behind the Little Sister. Since the Gatherer generated absolutely no sympathy from players, the team experimented with concepts for featuring a number of animals, including the infamous dog in a wheelchair, and later a grotesque miniature humanoid. Finally, a concept sketch of a deformed child inspired the eureka moment responsible for the Little Sisters. Yes, we know from listening to the director's commentary in previous episodes that Gatherers had started out as these sort of slug-like creatures. But in the actual game itself, they ended up going with the idea that they found a sea slug that they would implant in a little sister in order to produce Adam. And Adam is what powered the plasmids. And plasmids were what everyone wanted. And to be honest, I kind of thought that the Little Sisters were also sort of symbolic of how we use and commodify, is that a word? Turn into commodities young women in our culture. But I guess it was just a way to elicit sympathy from the player. Don't know why they didn't have young boys and young girls. They just had girls. But if I had to guess, it's probably because it was just easier that way. They didn't have to make two character models. This game did come out 10 years ago. They didn't quite have as much to work with as far as, memory and processing and all of that as we have now with the next generation consoles. This guy. He looks like a super mutant. Stitchy. The first splicer that Irrational created for Bioshock, Stitchy, was used in many early concept demos and was fully functional in-game with kinematics, hit reactions, and voiceover. It took us that long to realize he wasn't a good model, says lead artist Sean Robertson. This is probably the worst abortion that Irrational has ever made. Personally, I'm glad that they decided to go towards something that looked much more human. I think this looks too much like a Fallout mutant. And that's fine. That's fine for Fallout. But there's something about Bioshock and about all the people still looking somewhat like people, I think, that makes it even more creepy and even more tragic. Early Splicer concept art. These are some of the first concept sketches to show Bioshock's enemies moving in a more human-like direction. Artists coupled that approach with the idea that Adam deformed the body in a way that related to its intended function. For instance, a giant grotesque arm on a melee enemy, not melee weapon. Their arm would become the melee weapon. It seemed like they were focusing on something a little bit more like military. You know, if somebody was going to shoot a gun or fight. I mean, they still fight. The splicers fight you, but you know, they're fighting with you know, hooks or ice or fire or something like that. I like that better. I think that's a little more original. Early splicer concept art. Yeah. Okay, I think that's the same thing we read on the other one. Let's see who this is. Pre-Yam Hand. Before solidifying the fiction around Adam, Irrational experimented with the idea of it being an external injected substance. Here you can see us playing around with Adam being mechanically injected, said lead artist Sean Robertson. So this splicer's got vials of it on his belt. This model was created but never made it into the game in any form. Which is kind of similar to the big boss battle we had at the end of the game. All these tubes shooting Adam into someone and making them very grotesque. But in the big boss battle that we fought in the last episode, instead of making him look like a Fallout mutant, it made him look more like one of the metallic statues that decorated Rapture, which I thought was much more appropriate. I don't know about you, but I thought that was pretty cool. Like one of these. Okay, who are these? These look like Big Daddy concept art. Let's see. Early splicer concept art. Moving from grotesque to human was a slow process. While early concepts saw the melee enemies grew monstrous arms, the team had trouble conveying how someone who had spliced to become a marksman would appear. Great big eyes, maybe? Early Big Daddy concept art. These are early concepts for the rosy type of Big Daddy, who, like the bouncer, was envisioned as a construction worker who had been repurposed as a protector for the gatherers. Let's see what's over here. Yeah, this looks like more Big Daddy concept art. Protector concept art. The Big Daddies, originally called Protectors, were envisioned as dive-suited construction workers retasked with the defense of atom gatherers. They used construction tools or improvised weapons that looked like they had been found on the seafloor. From left to right are early concepts for the melee, ranged, and slow projectile protectors. Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you would think with an underwater city they would need to have people in diving suits outside doing repairs and whatnot. And then to repurpose those into protectors would make sense. Let's see what's over here. Who is this? Ooh. This looks like an early splicer model. She's got the hooks for climbing on the ceiling. Exhibit Hooker, created around the same time as Stitchy and the Grenadier. The splicer was dubbed the Hooker because of her weapon of choice. This concept evolved into the Spider Splicer when it was decided that splicer models could fill any behavior role, and the Hooker model later became the Baby Jane Splicer. Neptune's Bounty concept art. This area appears in the Neptune's Bounty level of BioShock, but the bodies floating in the ocean were cut late in development when their cast shadows proved too distracting from the action in the room. Well, that's unfortunate. I think this would have looked cool. I mean, it would make sense to have bodies floating around in the ocean outside the city, right? I thought they had that in a few of the levels. Or maybe I just imagined that they did. Maybe I imagined it. Early environmental study. The location depicted here was built for the Vision demo of BioShock, a small level demonstrating several of the key elements of the game, such as the Big Daddies and Gatherers. Who's this guy? Ooh. The Grenadier? How do you say that? Grenadier Splicer. This gray elephantine Splicer was an early Grenadier from the same period of development as Stitchy and Hooker. He was a guy who spliced to carry around giant grenades and throw them at you, says lead artist Sean Robertson. The model was built and textured but never animated. Yeah, I'm glad they moved away from the Fallout mutant-looking characters. I know we've got some more to look at back there, but I want to look at these right here. These look like Big Daddy. Yeah, Big Daddy models. What's this one? Early Bouncer. This original model for the bouncer type of Big Daddy featured a flat-headed drill at the end of each arm. The Big Daddies were envisioned as the builders of Rapture, with weapons modified from tools they would have used in its construction. When the Gatherers were reimagined as little sisters, one of the bouncer's drills was changed to a gloved hand so the two characters could interact with each other. It's cool how I can walk right up to him and look at all the detail. I wish more games would do this. Have a museum that you could walk through. That would be really cool. to show the concept art and the various characters so you could get right up close and really see them in the light. See how they became what they are. That's really cool. Slow Pro Fum. Irrational's internal name for this prototype Big Daddy variant, who mauled players with an enormous hook and fired iron bearings from a barrel, stood for Slow Projectile Fucked Up Melee. FUM, Fum. He survived long enough to become a fully functional AI, but the team eventually cut him to focus on polishing the other Big Daddy types. This model later appeared in Bioshock 2 as the Rumbler, throwing miniature turrets instead of cannonballs. Uh-oh. I guess we're gonna meet this Big Daddy in Bioshock 2. Nice. Looking forward to it. Alright, this is where we came in. I think we've looked at everything on this lower level. Let's move up here to the upper level. That looks a bit like Fort Frolic. Oh, yeah, Fleet Hall concept art. This early concept for Sander Cohen's Fleet Hall was created after level building had begun. When the designers found they were having difficulty conceptualizing the theater space, it was one of the earliest spaces built for Bioshock, and many of the assets used in this museum come from that area. Iconic Rapture concepts. This was the first image that really captured all the visual elements that made Bioshock Bioshock. A large view of the ocean, the aquatic lighting scene, and the elegant Art Deco design elements. Without this image, Bioshock would have been a radically different beast. Yes, it would have. I really think that the art style is a big part of what set Bioshock apart from other games. It was just incredible and beautiful. And this thing is not beautiful. Ew. Yam Hand model. This character, derisively called Yam Hand around Irrational Games, was the poster child of the conceptual phase that preceded the decision to go with human enemies. I'd point out the drawings behind the model, says lead artist Sean Robertson. You can see the top one got built, but the other two informed the design as well. As we trended more towards humanoids, the Scooby monsters got goofier and less scary. Yeah, I am definitely happy that they moved more toward everything being human looking, retaining its humanity, but just getting super, super creepy. I mean, that's what makes them so creepy. You know, you can still see the human in the splicers, and it's very tragic and very scary. Early creature concepts. These were some of the earliest pieces done for Bioshock from back when Irrational was still working on SWAT 4. The only concrete ideas at that point were an undersea city and biological experimentation, so early concepts focused on those themes. That's pretty cool, though. That's like a Big Daddy who's actually got a slug attached to them. That's pretty cool. Early Big Daddy concept art. This was the fourth protector concept. Originally created with an organic slug attached to it, a model was started but never completed as the team narrowed their focus to 3, and finally just 2 Big Daddy types. I still like this as a protector, says artist Rob Waters. We started modeling and I really pushed to get it in, even as just a static model on the floor, but it never made it. Aww. Yeah, that would have been really cool. Ah, this guy. He's starting to look more like the splicers that we see in the game. I recognize that shirt and pants combination on many of the dead folks we saw in the Prometheus level, I think it was, with the power plant. Missing Link model. This character is essentially the missing link between the grotesque early designs and the human splicers that appeared in Bioshock. This is the last bad model we did before moving on to what actually went into the shipping game, says lead artist Sean Robertson. After playing with him for a while, we just said, why don't we use humans instead? I always thought of these as Scooby-Doo monsters because they were too inhuman to invoke empathy. Exactly. Empathy and horror. This looks like a submarine bay. Sub-bay, concept art. This is a concept sketch depicting what would later become Submarine Bay, an area which housed an important scene for Atlas. I don't think they actually had a lot of submarines, though. Didn't they use bathyspheres instead? Well, they talk about submarines a little bit in the game, I think, in the Neptune's Bounty level. Because people had to go out and fish. They had fishermen that would go out in the subs to get food. Big Daddy concept art. An early concept depicting a Big Daddy bursting through a wall, which inspired the audio log in the Big Daddy training grounds about a rogue Big Daddy. The player then encountered him at the end of the level. Yeah, we sure did. In the proving grounds. Alright. And then, oh look. And these look like the crayon drawings that we saw inside the Little Wonders educational facility. There's a little gatherer girl, and there's a Big Daddy. He kind of looks like a big potato with butter on him. And there's a crayon. I don't recognize this guy. But there they are, as if someone was just here drawing them. Alright, I think that's everything inside the museum, you guys. Oh wait, there's a picture back here. A big one. Iconic Rapture concepts. This was one of several paintings that tried to portray the most important elements of Rapture at once. These images would help define the ruined underwater Art Deco aesthetic that the team was attempting to capture. Well, capture it they did. And yes, it is Art Deco, which is what makes this diesel punk. Some people have referred to it as steampunk, and there are a lot of steampunk-ish elements, like in the gears on some of the weapons, and definitely in Bioshock Infinite. I think Bioshock Infinite looks more steampunk because it's kind of got that Victorian era style to it. But the first Bioshock was really Art Deco, not Art Nouveau, not Victorian. Art Deco was a little bit later than the Victorian period. It was more into like the 20s and 30s. And that's what makes this diesel punk. Some people have referred to Bioshock as diesel punk. But yes, that Art Deco style, they did a great job. Wow, this is really cool. Nice little bonus feature. And now it is time for me to move on to playing Bioshock 2. However, there is one more little feature in this game. I am going to see if we can find it here. Let me show you. Oh, no, I don't know if I want to. Unsaved progress. No. Okay. Well, what I'm going to I'll just tell you instead of show you. There is one more section of bonus content. I'm not really sure what they are. I've never looked at them, but it looks like there's an area where we can go and do these little like bonus rooms or bonus levels of the game. and play through some bonus content. I don't know if that's bonus content that was included in the original BioShock or something that's been added for the BioShock Collection remaster, but I will do a separate video of that and show you guys, and we'll find out together what that's all about. Until next time, take care of yourselves.